Hey guys, don't forget to check out my second channel for my dog Casper the Friendly Floof. I'm going to be vlogging him from the time he is a puppy all the way to adulthood to kind of create a visual storybook for myself. But if you want to watch his progress as he grows up as well, make sure to subscribe to the channel and have your notifications on so that you can see when he comes home and watch him grow too. Everything starts from zero, and one person can change everything, whether it be for better or for worse. Every major cult starts from humble beginnings. Massive cults like Heaven's Gate and People's Temple did not just exist one day and have an immediate massive following. They grew from small, loyal, dedicated groups of followers that were able to indoctrinate and spread the group's message. But how did they do it? Well, if this piqued your interest even a little bit, then get ready for today's video. Because today we're going to be taking a look at how cults work. What are their beginnings, the consistent pattern that they use to gain loyal followers, and how they continue to establish dominance over their followers. Hey everyone, it's Blair or the Illuminati, and welcome back to the channel. If you're relatively new to the channel, or if you've been watching for a long while, you'll probably notice that I seem to circle around many topics that focus on people who either grow companies or groups that seem to indoctrinate people into a distorted way of thinking or viewing the world around them. As many of you know, I mainly look at multi-level marketing companies and the business side of things, but I rarely focus on the psychology behind the triggers that cause someone to become obsessed with a company, group, or person. But today, I am going to take a step back from digging into a particular company to look at the human component involved in a cult-like obsession beyond logical reason. And the closest resemblance to that is how cults work. So that is what I'm going to be talking about today. I want to know how cults work and to see if some of these similarities match how multi-level marketing companies act with new hunbots. So let's get into it.
I don't want to take my time going to work. I got a motorcycle and a sleeping bag and 10 or 15 girls. What the hell I want to go off and go to work for? Work for what? Money? I got all the money in the world. I'm the king, man.
Young Living has a mission. And I didn't understand it when I started. In fact, in the beginning, I kind of fought a little bit because I thought, I'm not cut out for this sort of thing.
I said that I am the return of the son of my father. I'll tell you something that's even more remarkable. My father came with me.
There's a president's team down here that's in the groove with each other with all the STSs that are going on. That is powerful. We need one team of people in this entire auditorium marching out of this meeting when we go back to our own countries and our own little homes and say, hey, we got the best company in the world.
Within you rest the keys of deliverance. Right. We ask for no condescending sinners. We want no help from some judgment. That has been pawned off on us too long.
To begin, let's take a look at what a cult is. Merriam-Webster defines a cult as a religion regarded as unorthodox or spurious, or a great devotion to a person, idea, object, movement, or work. We have seen certain celebrities like Kylie Jenner or K-pop groups like BTS have cult followings or groups of extremely dedicated fans. Sometimes we call them stans, although that's not really a positive term. We even have frequently discussed the obsessive following of certain MLM distributors like Young Living and how they will fervently protect their founder, Donald Gary Young, and the company, even when provided with empirical data that what they believe is false. But how do you get someone to that point of blind faith? To me, the word cult garners a very specific type of thought. I think of someone who is crazy obsessed with someone and they worship a narcissist or entities or ideas of the world coming to an end. You might think of murder, brainwashing, and undying devotion. And there is, of course, a different value assigned to the word based on who you are, and I understand that I may have not mentioned all of those components, but that's what I find so interesting about these different definitions and variations of what a cult could actually mean. But for this specific video, we're going to be digging a little deeper than the superficial level of cult activity into something a little more malicious. Cults use many techniques to ensure their followers are blind and loyal to follow their leader's whim, and it goes way beyond the basics, and it gets a little disturbing. At the center of every cult is a leader. The Family had Charles Manson, and the People's Temple had Jim Jones. No matter who is leading the group, cult leaders tend to have a certain set of very similar characteristics that are pretty much universal. All cult leaders will, to some degree, have these following 4 dangerous personality traits. The first is that cult leaders tend to have a grandiose idea of who they are and what they can achieve. They seem to have an otherworldly sense of knowledge and position themselves to be in a position of power by knowing what is better for you because they know more than you could ever possibly know. The second is that they often become preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, or brilliance. They have ideas of expansion, or the cliche world domination notion. The third is that they will usually demand blind, unquestioned obedience from their followers. They must have followers that feel they no longer need to think for themselves because the group as a whole will be guided by the leader in a way that is best for that group as an entity. And finally, they require excessive admiration from followers and outsiders. They want to be fond to feed their own ego, but also to subconsciously train their followers that they are beyond the constraints of humanity. Looking at these characteristics, we can see that these aren't exactly desirable traits. In fact, a lot of people have made comparisons to the ways narcissists can have a very similar personality trait to many cult leaders. They both act larger than life, they create a very prevalent us versus them mentality, and they devalue or minimize feelings of the individual follower. As a side note, narcissism is something that really does get tied into a lot of cult leaders, and I do believe that many cult leaders suffer from extreme narcissism, so I think it's fair that we kind of define the word so that we're all on the same page as we go forward. According to the Mayo Clinic, narcissism is a mental condition in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, troubled relationships, and a lack of empathy for others. But behind this mask of extreme confidence lies a fragile self-esteem that's vulnerable to the slightest criticism. Because of their deep-rooted insecurities regarding themselves, they find comfort in the love and admiration of those around them to help validate themselves. Now, for the record, there are levels of intensities with narcissism when it comes to what kind of route it takes, but to start a cult or to cultivate a certain level of obsession from followers, that does take a specific type of person to get to that point. Not just any old ordinary narcissist. But those who have the ability to take this route can often be very successful and almost to a terrifying degree. So how do people with these kinds of personalities even gain followers? Based on what I've just told you, it may seem unlikely that you would want to be around that type of person, but that's not how narcissists gain your trust and your loyalty. Think of the analogy of a frog in boiling water. If you throw a frog into boiling water, it will immediately jump out of it. The water is too hot and it burns him, and he knows it, so he's evading harm. But if you place a frog in lukewarm water and then very slowly turn the temperature up to boiling, he will slowly adjust and stay in and end up boiling himself alive. And so is the cycle of cult indoctrination. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like. Many, if not all, cult leaders use a particular model of manipulation known as the BITE model. BITE stands for Behavior Control, Information Control, Thought Control, and Emotional Control. This model utilizes a 4-part methodology to create total control over followers, which creates the sheep following that a cult leader needs to create a strong group and boost and fulfill their own ego needs. Individually, each part of the BITE model can create partial success, but when used together, this model is extremely dangerous and is what makes cults so successful. And I'm now going to break down what each part of the BITE model does and how it affects the individual that's being influenced. The first part of the BITE model is behavioral control. Controlling behavior is essential for a successful cult leader. When you control behavior, it is referring to individual behavior. This means you are controlling a person's clothing, hairstyle, living arrangements, sexuality, what food they eat or what they drink, and even sleep behaviors. Behavior control is about stripping your individuality by what you physically do. This form of control is also where blind obedience to the leader is strengthened, behavior is reinforced with a rewards and punishment system, and members are normally financially exploited. When this form of control becomes stronger, the followers will eventually learn to ask their leader for permission when making major decisions in their lives. Information control mainly deals with controlling the flow of information. This is when higher-ups or the leaders themselves are deciding what information is known to members and what remains concealed. Information is deliberately distorted or withheld, the information you provide is gathered and used against you for disobeying, and propaganda is used extensively to further control. You would be encouraged to spy on other members' misconduct, and you are often required to disclose your own feelings, thoughts, and activities to superiors. Gaslighting, or sowing the seeds of doubt about your own past, is often used at this time to distort your own reality and memories. This overall blurring of the lines of your personal past into the collective future of the cult is a key portion of allowing a cult to be successful. This method of control has to do mainly with mental manipulation and stripping of an individual's identity. This is where the more well-known portions of what traditional cult-like behavior will start to emerge. This area of the model will focus on excessive meditation, prayer, singing and chanting, inducing hypnotic trances to further the indoctrination process, only allowing positive thought and language, and even changing the individual's identity, sometimes even down to their name. This is also where the ever-critical us versus them mentalities are injected into the thought process, and the rejection of rational analysis, critical thinking, and doubt begin to emerge and take hold of the individual. The final portion of the BITE model is emotional control. This is where an indoctrinated member will feel the emotional throes to physically exhaust themselves in both positive and negative ways. This will include instilling irrational fears as to what will happen to this individual if they leave the group, love bombing them or showering the individual with love and praise, labeling certain emotions as wrong or evil, promoting feelings of guilt, shame, or hopelessness, teaching them that there is no happiness outside the group, and threatening friends and family, and even threatening the individual if they disobey or leave. And this is how the basic model works. While it's not a concrete blueprint and there's no certain order as to which kind of control is coming first or second, third, or last, these tactics have been used long before the model was even identified as a model. The BITE model was later created to help those of us who aren't capable of this behavior or understanding it to try and rationalize it for us with a process that is more clear and identifiable. Although this model has a heavy emphasis on how cults and how they work, I can't help but notice the odd similarities to how MLMs use similar techniques to get their new recruits to sell, sell, sell. And let's not forget how many of these Huns that dive right into this, go into debt, isolate themselves from their friends and family, and heavily rely on positive confirmation from their upline and other Huns around them to feel validation for the work they are doing. And it sounds just a little bit off now that I've explained the BITE model to you, doesn't it? Now, I'm not going to outright say that MLMs are cults, and there are absolutely some that use a very similar process to the BITE model to get new Huns to do what they want them to do, but not all of them are like this. I just find that the human mind is absolutely fascinating, what we are capable of, and what other people are able to do to us, whether it be good or bad, is incredible. One of the best things about our minds is our ability to learn, and although this isn't directly an anti-MLM video, I do believe this video can be something we use to better inform and protect ourselves and our friends and family around us from falling into these pit holes. With one or two of these pieces of the BITE model, it can sway certain individuals to certainly follow a leader, but when all of these techniques are used from a super charismatic and manipulative individual, this is how a successful cult leader can emerge and grow a very loyal following. And I think that's truly terrifying and really fascinating at the same time. Cults and their leaders have always been very interesting to me. Although many come to a tragic end, The process of changing someone from a productive member of a hyper-individualistic society and then convincing them to live in a collectivistic society to worship a new god or leader in an almost freakish way is mind-blowing. I can only truly look through my own lens, and I am someone who doesn't really struggle with dealing with a person who would have this kind of personality. And by that I mean, I don't feel I would be easily swayed if I came across someone who was like a cult leader. But I most certainly have friends around me who I believe could be more easily swayed, and I'm so curious as to what makes them tick, and what is the thing that would finally make them theoretically snap into agreeance with the said leader. And by proxy, what type of person would actually fall for a cult, and how could a cult do this, and how does it suck them in? And that's where I'm going to end today's video. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. And let me know down in the comment section if you see some similarities between the techniques in the bite model and how cults and even MLMs work to indoctrinate people into their side of the family. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you want even more content from me, make sure to check out my collaboration channel with Sad Milk, the second channel for my puppy Casper, or any of my social media. Links for everything will be in the description box down below. Thank you guys so much for making it to another video. I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. And don't get sucked into a cult. Love you guys, bye!